Vajajannaranjana Yasharanandana Vajajannaranjana Yamanatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Ra- Jaya Radha Dhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Kunja Vihari Gopi Janamalapa Girivara Dari Gopi Yashodanandana Vajjanaranjana Yashodanandana Vajjanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Chari Jaya Radha Dama Shirare Madhava Radha Madhava Shirare Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Shirare Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Shirare Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Nitai Gaura Hariva Hare Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Jai Ashta Shara Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Jai Ashta Shara Shri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Kori Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Nitai Gauratanami Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Hare Krishna, thank you for coming. Bhagavatam class this morning. Nice to see devotees in the temple and of course devotees online. So we're continuing to read from Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto, chapter number 9, the supreme character of Bharata. Text number 11, which is in prose, so I'll just read it and then we can do word for word together. Yaratu Bharata Aharam Karmave hanta ihamana svabrattibhirapi kedara karmani nirupitastad api karoti kintu na samam vishamam nunam adikam iti veda hana pinya palikarana fulmasa sta vipurishadhinyapi amritavad ahabhyavarharati. So word for word, yada,
Yada,
when,
when,
who,
who,
but,
but,
Bharata,
Bhagavatam,
from others,
from us,
aharam,
aham,
food,
who,
karma vitena,
karma,
in exchange for wages from working,
just for working.
vihamana,
Vihara,
looking for swabhar to be,
looking for somebody to
happy,
happy,
even by his own stepbrothers,
even by his own time.
kedara karmani,
Kedara Karmani,
in working in the field
when working in the field,
and adjusting the agricultural work,
just in the agricultural work,
nirupita,
Nirupita,
engaged,
engaged,
tat api,
Tat Api,
at that time also,
at that time also,
karoti,
Karoti,
he used to do,
we used to do,
kintu,
Tuntu,
but,
but,
na,
na,
not,
no,
samam,
Samam,
level,
no,
vishmamam,
Vishwama,
uneven,
uneven,
nunam,
Yunam,
deficient,
deficient,
adikam,
Radhika,
more raised,
more raised,
iti,
Iti,
thus, Veda,
Veda,
he knew,
Inu,
kana,
Ka,
broken rice,
broken rice,
pinyaka,
Vinyaka,
oil cakes,
Olympic,
hali karana,
Nuri Karana,
the chaff of rice,
Chaff, Grace,
kulmasa,
Gold, Masa,
worm-eaten grains,
Worm and Grains,
stali purisha,
Stali Bunisha,
adina,
Balida,
burned rice stuck to the bottom of the pot,
bird rice stuck to the bottom of the pot,
and so on.
and so on.
Api,
Api,
even,
even,
amritavat,
Amdava,
like nectar,
like Moku,
abhyavaharati,
Kavya Vyaharati,
used to eat.
used to eat.
Translation and purport. Thank you. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jada Bharat used to work only for food. His stepbrothers took advantage of this and engaged him in agricultural field work in exchange for some food. Actually, he did not know how to work very well in the field. He did not know where to spread the dirt or where to make the ground level or uneven. His brothers used to give him broken rice, oil cakes, and chaff of rice, worm-eaten grains, and burned grains that had stuck to the bottom of the pot. But he gladly accepted all this as if it were nectar. He did not hold any grudges and ate all this very gladly. Purport. The platform of Paramahamsa is described in Bhagavad Gita 2.15. Samadukya sukham dhiram somrithavya kalpate. When one is callous to all duality, the happiness and distress of this material world, one is fit for amritatva, eternal life. Bharat Maharaj was determined to finish his business in this material world, and he did not at all care for the world of duality. He was complete in Krishna consciousness and was oblivious to good and evil, happiness and distress, as stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Dvaiti bhadra bhadra jnana sabha manodharma he bhala e manda Sabha Brahma. In the material world, conceptions of good and bad are all mental speculations. Therefore, saying this is good and this is bad is all a mistake. One has to understand that in the material world of duality, to think that this is good or that this is bad is simply a mental concoction. However, one should not imitate this consciousness. One should actually be situated on the spiritual platform of neutrality. Om Jnanatimidandasya Kananjana Shalakaya Chakshunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. A translation again. Jadabharat used to work only for food. His stepbrothers took advantage of this and engaged him in agricultural field to exchange for some uh, food. But actually he did not know how to work very well in the field. He did not know where to spread dirt or where to make the ground level or uneven. His brothers used to give him broken rice oil cakes, the chaff of rice worm-eaten grains, and burned grains that had stuck to the pot. But he gladly accepted all of this as if it were nectar. He did not hold any grudges and ate all this very gladly. So we're hearing about the symptoms of Paramahamsa, or a great personality, that they don't consider any material situation in this world to be good or bad, but they just see that this is just a temporary phase of time, and that actually anything that's happening materially, um, if one sees it as good or sees it as bad, then it's really just a concept inside of their mind. It's not actually real. Just like when we're dreaming at night, we may think, oh, this is a good dream or this is a bad dream. But when we wake up, in reality, we understand that actually this dream really had no significance at all, whether it was good or bad. It was simply a dream. So for the Paramahamsa, then they not only understand this, but they see life like that. Yeah, this is, I may be eating burnt rice or I may be eating sweet rice, but it's really just the same thing. It's just flavors of the material world. So be it good, does it please my senses, does it not please my senses? This is irrelevant for someone who is actually on the stage of someone like Jadabharat, who uh, is completely aware of the spiritual reality. So they often behave in very strange ways because when we look out into the world, we see people, generally they behave in a certain way. They're looking for happiness, for sense gratification in the material world, and they're trying to avoid unhappiness. So then it's kind of a certain way that people conduct themselves. And we sort of expect people to act in a certain way based on that desire for happiness and the desire to avoid distress. So sometimes, though, we hear about these personalities within Bhagavatam or Chaitanya Charitamrita who are known as avadutas because they behave in a very strange way. They don't seem to take any interest in their own personal happiness or their own personal sense gratification. So they can behave in very odd ways. We have the example here of Jadabharat, who seemingly was, from the external point of view, people thought he must just be crazy. He must be something wrong with him. There's some mental issue. He, as we'll read or as we hear, he would do everything back to front. So he would clean himself first and then do the activity that would make him dirty instead of doing the activity that makes him dirty and then cleaning himself. everything his dad tried to teach him, he would do back to front. So very frustrating trying to deal with such a person. But he purposely did all these things so that he wouldn't become entangled in the material world. So he behaved like a madman. But internally, he was always conscious of who he was as an eternal servant of Krishna. So there are other examples within Bhagavatam. My favorite is that of the Python man. We hear about Prahlad Maharaj. He was traveling throughout the different lokas. He was on, you could say, like a holiday for someone who's advanced in their spiritual consciousness. They were not going to see the sights, but they were going to see saintly people. So he came across the Python man, who to him appeared to be quite an unusual sight because he was just lying in the middle of the road, not doing anything for his maintenance, but he'd become very fat. So he was thinking, how is this possible that you're just lying here not doing anything, but yet you're putting on weight? So the Python man explained to him that we think that we're acting in this world and that, I have to do this and I have to do that in order to be fed, in order to be looked after. But actually, we're all getting what we deserve according to our previous activities. So sometimes I'm fed like a rich man. Sometimes I'm starving like a poor man. But in any case, I'm getting exactly what I deserve. So I just sit here and let the results of my previous activities come. And he explains that he got to this situation because he was observing interactions between men and women, and he was thinking that they're actually getting contrary results to what they wanted. Because he could see that, yes, obviously there's some attraction between male and female, they're looking for happiness. But he could see that actually it was causing them both distress. So he thought, seeing the contradictions in material nature, let me just lie here and just live out this life and be absorbed in spiritual consciousness. So in reading this pastime, we kind of get a bit of an understanding, or when we read about these people, we get a bit more of an understanding about how they see the world, um, and how it's just like for us, as I was saying in the beginning, we wake up from a dream and we think there's nothing that was not really of any relevance. I don't have to take this so seriously. So persons advanced in spiritual consciousness, they don't take the dreamlike state of material existence to be very serious. Um, they don't think that, yes, this, if my senses are not feeling satisfied and pleased, then I'm unhappy. But rather they're thinking, how can I satisfy the senses of Krishna? Then I'll actually be happy. Um, and as we know, that doesn't, Krishna consciousness, or being conscious of Krishna, is not necessarily about what we do, but it's how we think while we're doing what we're doing. So here, we see that Jada Bharat, from a material perspective, he is just completely out of it. He's not doing anything for anyone. Uh, but internally, he's remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead, performing service in that way. Thank you. Yeah. So, when we read about this, we may think, the symptom of a Paramahamsa is that they're free from this duality of happiness and distress. As a new devotee, we may, I remember thinking, what's so special about that? I seem pretty free from happiness and distress. Even before I was a devotee, I remember thinking like that, yeah, I feel pretty happy. I don't see how this is so significant. Um, but as we continue to practice Krishna consciousness, we hear that chanting the Maha Mantra is like cleaning our heart. And once we start cleaning, then often we realize, wow, this place is a real mess. I've got a lot of cleaning to do. Just the other day, actually, we were cleaning the third floor of the ashram, the men's ashram here. And we went into the room. We could see that actually it was quite well organized. It was kind of like neat and tidy in some ways. but we knew that there was a few things we had to clean, had to throw out. So after an hour of cleaning, the place looked like more of a mess than what it did when we went in there. So because we realized that, oh wow, there's so many things in here that have not been moved for so long, there's so much dust accumulated. We had to make so many different piles, a pile for the free store, a pile for the burn pile, a pile for the trash, a pile of um, sacred paraphernalia that was no longer being used. So all these different piles that we had accumulated by our cleaning. So in the beginning, we may feel ourselves to be quite purified, or even before coming to Krishna consciousness, we may think, yeah, I'm quite happy, quite satisfied. But then we come and we begin to chant the Maha Mantra and we realize how actually it's not really necessarily the case. That we are actually quite bewildered by the dualities of happiness and distress. And to be free from that is actually a very high platform. So Krishna explains this in the Bhagavad Gita. Icha dvesha samutayana. um, Tanda mohina bharata. Thank you. So he explains that all living entities, they're born into delusion, bewildered by the desire for, bewildered by the dualities of desire and hate. So when we come into this world, we're born into a state of delusion where we think, yes, I desire sense gratification, and I hate, actually, Prabhupada explains, I hate Krishna's instructions. So the idea of having to be told what to do, or having to control our mind, control our senses, is something that by nature the conditioned soul doesn't like. We want to be in a situation where we can just experience happiness, and we think that that will come by just letting my senses do whatever I like, whenever I want. So in material life, in the Western world, generally people are quite happy because they have so much sense gratification on offer for them. The whole society today is structured in such a way that you can go out, you can get your job, and you can make a little bit of money, and you can have your sense gratification. Um, And people are thinking, because they have no higher knowledge, that, yeah, I'm actually doing pretty good. I have my car, I have my television, I have my house, I have my family, and I'm doing everything that the television shows me I should be doing. So I should, I'm actually happy. Of course, they're not happy, they're dissatisfied, but because we don't generally like to admit that we're unhappy, then there's this big show going on where everyone um, is pretending more or less to be satisfied and happy, but actually internally very dissatisfied because of their lack of connection to Krishna. So society is structured like this to keep people. Actually, His Holiness David Swami, he described one time who was speaking with the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, and the Prime Minister was telling him that, yeah, all you have to do to keep people happy, it's quite simple. You just give them alcohol at a cheap rate, and you give them a lot of channels on television to watch, other sport channels. And if you can give them these two things, then people will be uh, peaceful and they'll follow what you like. They'll follow what the government does. So basically, society is structured in such a way that you just are given your sense gratification and you should just be happy with that and live out your life and not think about anything higher. So before coming to Krishna consciousness, unless we're fortunate to take birth in a devotee family, then most of us were just trying our best to have sense gratification at every moment, and our life is considered successful if we have a sequence of events of sense gratification, and our sense gratification isn't impeded. Um, but when we come to Krishna consciousness, then we hear about this thing of voluntarily giving up our own sense gratification for the purpose of trying to please Krishna, trying to please our spiritual master and the parampara. So then we begin this process of Krishna consciousness, and we realize that actually it's not so easy to put aside our own desires for happiness, our own desires for sense gratification, for the purpose of pleasing someone else. So then we begin to realize, well, actually, I am quite bewildered by the dualities of happiness and distress in this world. I really am very attached to trying to make this world a place which is just for my own enjoyment. Um, and I don't really have very much taste for trying to please someone else, for trying to please Krishna. So, if we come back to this purport, then we'll see the Prabhupada, he's explaining at the end of this purport that someone who should not actually try to imitate this consciousness of someone like Jadabharat, where they see um, that, yeah, I'm completely free from happiness, I'm completely free from distress. Because if we try to imitate something that is not actually natural for us, then there's a good chance that we will fall from that platform. Uh, and this is the same instruction that Krishna gave to Arjuna on the battlefield. Arjuna was thinking that, yeah, perhaps I can just leave the battlefield and I'll go live as a Brahmin. I don't have to take part in this fight. Krishna told Arjuna, no, this is your duty as a Kshatriya, that you should fight because this is your nature. And if you refuse to act according to that nature, then in the future you will fight anyway. So rather than trying to um, pretend that you're something else, you should work according to your nature. So generally, most of us who come to Krishna consciousness, we're coming from a background of conditioning, of being attached to the material energy. So rather than trying to just pretend that we're something that we're not, better that we work according to our nature, according to the conditioning that we have, and engage it in Krishna's service. As Krishna explains in the third chapter, I believe, text 6, he explains of Bhagavad Gita that one who dwells on sense objects but um, thinks himself to be renounced from them, then he actually deludes himself and is called a pretender. So no one likes a pretender, whether in spiritual life or in material life. Everyone wants the genuine, real thing. No one wants an imitation. So as devotees, then we aspire to be like these great personalities. If we're not already there, we aspire to be like them. So sure, some of us may be on that platform, but we don't have to imitate. We just have to try to apply the process of Krishna consciousness so that gradually we come to the platform where we see that actually my own happiness is not so significant. It's actually the happiness of Krishna which is significant. So whether I'm having a quote unquote good day or a quote unquote bad day, the real thing is how am I actually acting to try to please Krishna. That's what will determine whether or not I'm having a good day or a bad day. Um, so we see many times, unfortunately, within the society of devotees, but elsewhere in the world, that there are persons who uh, try to be on a platform that they're not situated on. You read about it in the Bhagavatam as well, and it never ends up very well. Actually, the word given in Bhagavatam, if I remember, is vantasi, for someone who is a sannyasi but then goes back to their life of material enjoyment. It's a very graphic word which basically describes someone who eats their own vomit because you have decided that, yes, I've renounced this, I don't want this, I'm vomiting it out, material enjoyment, I've got nothing to do with it anymore, I've got no interest in it, and then you change your mind and you take it back. So it's a very graphic way of explaining that trying to renounce something but actually still attached, and then you take it back as your meal. So um, we don't want to make this mistake of pretending that we're something that we're not. And therefore, Krishna is very kind upon us and has given us Chaturvanam, Maya Shrishtam, is 4 different varnas and ashrams that we can fit into and try to make advancement from where we are. Uh, So this reminds me of course, Krishna encouraging Arjuna to work according to who he is. But also it reminds me of one of my favorite pastimes that I've taken. Of course, everyone in Bhagavatam we can take inspiration from. We all probably have our personal favorites, whether it be Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, or Queen Kunti, or so many different personalities that we can take inspiration from. But personally, someone who I think really affected me so far in my small practice of Krishna consciousness was um, King Yadu, who, as we know, um, was the son of King Yayati. So this pastime is often relayed, and I think one of a favorite amongst devotees because it's kind of exciting and it carries a lot of very nice messages through the pastime. So we hear how King Yayati, he um, got himself into quite an unusual situation where he became the hero of one Devayani, who had had a fight with her friend Sharmishta. Devayani had been thrown into a well, and while she was in there, she saw King Yayati come, her hero, to come and save her. And so they connected hands as King Yayati pulled Devayani out of the well. And at that time, they were considered married. But due to previous arguments that had happened, then there was a situation that arose where Devayani had to share King Yayati with her friend Sharmishta. And King Yayati was warned by the father of Devayani that don't do anything to make my daughter Devayani jealous. In other words, don't lie in bed with this friend of hers, Sharmishta. But due to force of circumstances, material energy being very strong, and also his position as a king wanting to give shelter, then he was put in the awkward situation where he did become the father to kids of this girl, Sharmishta, and then he was cursed by the father of Devayani to have to prematurely accept old age. And so King Yayati, being devastated, begged the father of Devayani, please don't curse me in this way. So he was kind upon him and said, okay, you may find someone else to give your old age to. You can give it to one of your sons. So King Yayati, he approached his different sons, and the first son that he approached is the famous King Yadu, who, of course, refers, when we hear about the Yadu dynasty, it refers to this same person, King Yadu. So King Yadu, he denied to take the old age of his father. Um, and it's said that his reasons for doing this were actually religious in comparison to his other brothers. So why was that? Because King Yadu, he was thinking that, yes, I would accept the old age of my father as a service to him, but I personally feel as though I have uh, desires for enjoyment within this world that if I don't act upon, then in the future I will struggle to actually attain renunciation. So he had a natural inclination towards renunciation, but he was thinking, if I accept this old age, how will I fulfill my desires that are very strongly there, such as having family, having children? If I don't experience this, then how will I attain renunciation at the end of my life? Um, so when I remember reading this purport and being quite um, impacted by it, although I'd read it quite a few times, uh, then more recently, in the last couple of years, when I read it, it really hit me that yes, this is actually an important point. And Prabhupada goes on to explain in the purport that Therefore, the system is generally brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas. That generally one cannot jump from one ashram to the last ashram, or even to vanaprastha ashram. But generally, it's the case that one needs to go through an opportunity where they engage their conditioning in Krishna's service as a grihastha. Um, so for me, when I read that, I took a lot of, I guess, encouragement from that point. Of course, there is also the reality that he was thinking, Yadu Maharaj was thinking, I need to have kids so that I can be the beginning of the dynasty that Krishna is going to appear in. So he also wanted to speed up the appearance of Krishna. So that was also another factor for him. But still, Prabhupada makes an effort to explain to us this important point that generally Varnashram Dharma is there for a reason, that most conditioned souls have to go through the experience of Grihastha, Brahmacharya, Grihastha, and then into the renounced orders of life later on. Um, so we don't have to imitate the great personalities and pretend that um, we're transcendental to all good and bad situations in this world, and we're transcendental to material happiness and material distress. We don't have to imitate that. We can aspire for it and gradually make advancement by engaging our mind and body in a way that's natural for us. And we'll begin to realize that actually what Bhagavatam is saying is true. My happiness is not really the most important thing. Um, just by performing devotional service under the guidance of the spiritual master, under the guidance of Shastra and the devotees that care for us, then gradually this realization begins to sink in. Um, it's not something that we have to artificially try for. It will come in due course of time. Um, but it's not a cheap thing. So we just have to endeavor, if we're not already there, and gradually these realizations will come upon us. Why is that? Because Krishna's pleasure is a fact. That if we just try to please Krishna, then the result will be that we'll perceive that. We'll perceive how Krishna is pleased. And that's very perceivable because we ourselves will become pleased, as we always hear that you cannot satisfy the leaves of a tree by watering the leaves directly, but you have to go to the root. So in a similar way, our dissatisfaction that for many, many millions of lifetimes we're trying to hide and try to pretend it's not there can be automatically solved just if we take the process of Krishna consciousness as it is. If we hear and we apply the instructions of the Bhagavatam, the spiritual master and the devotees, then we'll see that automatically we can become satisfied. So we may get glimpses of this, feeling completely liberated from feelings of happiness and distress. I remember so many times being on Sankirtan, and it's hot or it's cold, and people are yelling at you, swearing at you, no one's taking a book, whatever it may be, but you can feel like you're in Vaikuntha. Although everything's going wrong materially, you can be so satisfied and not even really know how or why. So these glimpses Krishna will give to us by performing devotional service. And it's not exclusive to book distribution. Anyone, in any service they do, be it very big or very small, can have that realization that actually I'm pleasing Krishna by the service, just by milking a cow, just by sweeping the floor in the temple, by dressing the deities, cooking for Krishna, serving prasadam to the devotees. So every service has the potency um, there to please Krishna. But it simply depends on how we think while we perform our activity. So we hear from Bhagavatam, we hear from the devotees, and we try to understand what is the right consciousness to be in while I perform my service. And that way we can gradually experience Krishna's presence in our service. And yeah, again, it can be any. I remember one time, this was probably one of my most memorable, I guess, experiences of this. I was asked to help one devotee do this catering uh, when we were living in the brahmachari ashram, and we had to cater for this wedding. And I think it was about 100 people, and it was $20 a head. So it was a lot. It was 200 people, $20 a head. And uh, the managers at the time, they were very kind of hesitant to give us this service, but they were all busy. So they gave these two new devotees the service to do. And we had really no idea how to do it or what to do. But we just tried our best. And basically, what they ended up meaning was that we started cooking on Friday morning. And then at Friday night at 12 o'clock, we stopped to chant our rounds. And then at 2 o'clock on Saturday morning, we began cooking again. And then by 5 o'clock at Saturday night, after not sleeping or eating, we finally finished cooking for this event, for this wedding, threw everything in the van and drove to the wedding. And I remember as we came in the driveway, the leader of the Brahmachari ashram was just behind us, coming from a different direction in his car. And I just remember feeling so amazed that somehow or other this whole thing had come together and we got there perfectly on time. Um, Although we had such little experience, we had no idea what we were doing, but we just tried our best. And Krishna just arranged everything else. And the whole thing was actually very successful. The prasadam turned out very nice. Everyone was very happy. We got paid the money for the ashram, which we needed at the time. So in other words, we got the experience. We got the experience that touch Trinu, just become an instrument uh, in Krishna's service. Just try to hear what it is that we can do, and just try to become instrumental in that service, and we'll see that Krishna will help us. Krishna will give us intelligence how to do it nicely. And we'll experience Krishna's uh, presence and Krishna's pleasure in that service. So we're very fortunate as devotees. Prabhupada's given us this whole society where uh, practically any type of person can come and they can engage themselves in Krishna's service in a meaningful way. Uh, So we want to give everyone else the opportunity as much as possible to come to Krishna consciousness, engage themselves in Krishna service, um, and become fortunate, because this is the way that we'll become free from the duality of happiness and distress in this world, which is so painful actually if we think back what our life was like. Although at the time, sometimes it can feel like, oh, it was quite a happy life, but when you think about it, actually it was a lot of distress, a lot of anxiety, and we didn't even get, that was just in teenage years, what to speak of. We're in our early 20s. But what to speak of what life would be like as an elderly person with so many unlimited desires for enjoyment in this world. But naturally, the body starts to fail, mind starts to fail, and our ability to act on those desires disappears. So, what kind of distressful situation we would be in, bewildered by duality of desire and hate, desiring sense gratification, hating Krishna's instructions, but no body to fulfill those desires, and being forced to actually accept the reality that Krishna is giving us, that you have to die, you have to take birth again. So we hate that reality in conditioned life, and we desiring so hard to have happiness, but we're looking for it in the wrong way. So we should be very, of course, I'm sure you are all grateful, but I'm just speaking for myself, trying to remind myself that I should be grateful for what Prabhupada, what the devotees are giving us, an opportunity to become free from um, this bewildering energy, um, this material energy, which is always um, influencing us to think that, yes, I should be the enjoyer. Everything is meant for my happiness. So stop there. some senior devotees here, perhaps they would like to say something, or some.
Question.
Yes, Prabhu.
We hear about the qualities of the pure devotees. There are many 26 qualities.
Yes,
And one of those qualities is to be expert.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So Jad Bharat being a pure devotee, and he didn't know how to work the field. How's that?
Mm.
That's the verse.
Yes.
Question.
Okay, so sorry, Prabhu, what was your name?
You think my name?
Yes,
Vishnu Das.
Vishnu Gadad.
Gada. What?
Vishnu Gadad. It's just asking a question for the devotees who are listening. So he was saying that one of the 26 qualities of a Vaishnava is that he's expert. But yet we see here that uh, Jadabharat, he couldn't even plow a field. So what is the explanation for this? He's obviously an advanced devotee, but yet he's acting in a way that doesn't appear to be very expert at all. Um, so it's interesting that you asked that question, because it's something that I thought about a lot. My Guru Maharaj always used to say to me, especially as brahmacharis, he always used to say to us, Prabhupada said brahmacharis should be expert. Are you becoming expert? And I used to say, in what field? He said, every field. He said, become expert cook, become expert book distributor, become expert ranga player, become expert reading and distributing, giving class, everything you do, you should become expert. So devotees, they should become experts. So why is it Jadabharat can't seem to uh, even plow a field? But I would say that Jadabharat's expertise is expressed in his way in which he is avoiding becoming entangled in the material energy. So there's really no point in becoming expert at something if it doesn't uh, give rise to our own Krishna consciousness or to the Krishna consciousness of others. So to be expert uh, for a reason that doesn't actually um, do anything for us spiritually, then there's no benefit to that. So it's often said that the Uttama Adhikari, they have to come down to the Majjhima Adhikari platform to actually preach Krishna consciousness. Because otherwise they just see everyone as being doing better service than they are. Um, so on a completely different platform, a different vision, and therefore they act in a completely different way. So, but Jadabharat, he's not actually concerned with coming down from that platform. He is also, it's Leela, it's pastime that he's showing how he was previously entangled and now how he's rectifying his situation of entanglement by not engaging at all in the material energy. Um, but we will see, as the pastime continues, that he does actually come down from that platform when he meets Rahuganath Maharaj, and he comes to a platform in order to preach to him. But apart from that, we don't see that Jadabharat makes any effort to actually appear expert in any way in the material field, because it's not going to be beneficial for him in any way. Whereas for us, we have a preaching mission. We're supposed to convert other persons into devotees. And it just so happens that those other people are very externally orientated and they appreciate expertise. If we're all completely spaced out and we can't put our dhoti on properly, then no one will appreciate that. But if we have expertise, we know how to farm, we know how to be ecologically friendly, we know how to be look after forest, look after the buildings that we have, look after everything that Krishna has given us, and we engage it in a very nice way in the material world, then people will appreciate, oh wow, this eco farm, Gitanagari, look how they're doing things so nicely. They're growing their own food, they are looking after the families that are here, they've got such nice relationships, so expert in their music, their culture, their arts. then naturally people will become attracted. So for the purpose of reaching Krishna consciousness and for our own benefit, then we should become expert in all the activities that Krishna Prabhupada has given us. But Jada he's playing a certain role where this is not, as far as I understand, it's not necessary for him to show these things.
So his brothers were offering the results of their agricultural work to Krishna.
Pardon me, sorry? His brothers were not.
We're not taking the results of their agriculture and offering the results to Krishna.
So Vibha was asking if his brothers, the brothers of Jadabhat, were they not taking their agricultural work, the fruits of their work, and offering it to Krishna? So my understanding is that I actually a little bit unfamiliar with the pastime, so I can't say for certain. But we do know that we're hearing that. Yeah, there's no reason for Jadabhat to act in this way. Just like in Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, okay, that's one point. Krishna does explain that in Bhagavad Gita that kings such as Janaka, they acted in this way even though they didn't need to. So he's telling Arjuna that you should act a certain way just to set the example for others. Yad yadacha atisheshtas. So one could argue that Jadabhat, you should just cooperate with your brothers and offer this rice or whatever to Krishna as an example for others. But he has his own. My point is that he is involved in his leela of becoming attached to the deer, taking the body of the deer, and then showing us how he's going to rectify his situation by not at all engaging in the material energy. Because it wasn't necessary for him to perform an activity like an ordinary conditioned soul would do by offering the fruits of their work. He was above the platform of karma yoga, so why engage in it? So that would be my.
Then Lord Chaitanya, when he was a child, he ate dirt. You remember that?
Yes.
And Mother Sachi chastised him. He said, "What's the difference? Dirt, you eat dirt, or it's we eat sweetmeats that's coming from the earth." He was seeing things equally, but Mother Sachi chastised him. But here we're talking, seeing one thing, the pot, the rice at the bottom of the pot, he's eating that, and it's wonderful. So how come there's two different instructions? You follow?
Can you give a little bit more explanation?
So Lord Chaitanya was seeing equally
Yes.
a sweetmeat or dirt. He was eating dirt, and he was seeing it equally.
Yes.
Sachi chastised him, and because for a particular reason.
Yes.
So here, Srila Prabhupada is glorifying Jadbhava. He's eating the burned stuff from the bottom of the pot and thinking it's just as good as anything else. So how come there's two different instructions?
So Prabhu is bringing up the pastime of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and how he, when he was a child, he ate dirt, and then his mother chastised him for eating dirt. He was saying, but it's all one, it's all the same thing. We eat from the clay pot, and here's dirt, it's all the same thing. What's the difference? So there's one instruction there, Mother Sachi chastising him, saying that it's wrong. But then in this particular instance, we see that Jadabhat is being glorified for his apparently not seeing the duality. So it seems that there's a contradiction in the two different instructions. As far as I understood that pastime with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it's more getting at the point that not everything is one. So Mother Sachi was dispelling the notion of impersonalism, that everything is one, but no, there's actually variety. Although it's all coming from the same substance, coming from clay, there's different use according to how the clay is molded. It can be molded into a pot, or then it becomes useful. So as far as I understood, there were two different points that were being made. The pastime that you're bringing up with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it's a point about personalism, but this is a point about a great soul who doesn't distinguish between what is good and what is bad, because he sees that what is really good is service to Krishna. So it doesn't matter whether I'm in good situation or bad situation. Just as Lord Shiva um, very nicely makes the point when King Chitraketu uh, is cursed by Parvati. And then he says for a devotee, um, whether in hell or whether in heaven, Svarga Apavarga, then he's happy if he has service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that was my understanding, is that these two different pastimes, they're hitting at two different points. Perhaps I misunderstood.
Still, Judge Bharata wasn't eating dirt. He was eating the rice from the bottom of the pot. It's still food. It's still anna.
Mm.
So if the pastime isn't that he's eating dirt or eating, wood or something like that. So there's still distinction. He's still accepting distinction, even though, that burned rice is not as palatable as the cooked rice with ghee. It's food stuff as opposed to just dirt.
Sorry, I'm just not following. What was the point?
So those 2 points are consistent if you look at it that way. In personalism, we don't say that everything is exactly one. Everything is all one, right? Everything. So in this case, whether it's good sense gratification or bad sense gratification, he sees it as all the same. It's not a big deal. But it's not that he's eating something that's not, completely. He's not eating poison, which is also something eaten or other things. So they're consistent because of that. He's not misleading anything, taking anything as food, but these particular foods. Hello? Yes.
Okay. Thank you for it. We'll stop there unless there's any further questions or comments. Kancha Shri Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, the Thai Guru Pranamami Dhanu.
Oh, is that where we should go with that? Do you ever go out there and not go out and it's very good. We got the mission for the dollars. I asked a little bit to get this, it's still what I think, going on, exactly. Prashayantana Tori Jaya Jaya Krishna Prapti Jana O Ite Chakudamilo Janme Janme Prabhu Sehi Sabritaya Bhutale, Vimase, Bhakti, Nam, Nam, Namaste, Saraswate, Gurava, Vishnu, Vishnu, Sarvipani, Bharata, Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram, Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Esse vai me dar um certo na área. Ah, deixa eu ver. Os caras são da casa. Ah, ele não. Ele ah, expectativa. Ah, Ishvara, mobilização a perigosa, verdade, Celebration involved children, children. The strength of the mountain. Children, this is you already get all. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Yasomatina kana gajapodana gopurdana kana Gopi Vashana Jamnat Gopi Vashana Sarosika Kripa Maya Abri Onatapara Onatapara Vinodasa Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Srimad. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Chaitanya Prabhu, Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srimad Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyam Sundar Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Lavani Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Jamuna Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Somaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Bhaktivinoda. All glory, all glory, all glory. All glory, all this is the last chapter. One of the things is devotion service. Bhagavatam has been speaking in the Bhagavatam. The information on one of the duties of our maintaining the institution. Well, I wish you could have an island. We're depending on the past is the direction of nothing. You all look like our and now. Really, I don't and then it's the band of the leader. They really keep it dry. But then this thing is something. I'm glad to know this motion mercy. Rather than forward, Lord, would ask the devotion. All I want to remember of love and be consistent with what's needed. Your favorites spread in all the world. You world and shall be sure to know a lot of feedback.
Hare Krishna. Good morning, Tarika Prabhu. Hope you will come over to see the deities.